A 6-second hug. That's all it took to set the entire internet on fire. When Erika Kirk and Vice President JD Vance embraced on stage at a packed arena in Mississippi, millions of people stopped scrolling and started speculating. Was it innocent? Was it inappropriate? And when Joe Rogan finally weighed in, the whole conversation shifted. This isn't just about a hug. It's about grief, politics, optics, and how fast a single moment can spiral into the biggest controversy of the year. The stage lights were blinding at the University of Mississippi on October 29th. Packed into the pavilion at Ole Miss, buzzing with anticipation. This wasn't just another political rally. It was the first major public appearance for Erika Kirk since her husband Charlie Kirk was shot and killed just weeks earlier. She walked onto that stage wearing a white shirt with the word freedom emblazoned across it, paired with sleek black leather pants. Her voice was steady, but you could hear the weight of everything she'd been through. She spoke about Charlie's legacy, about the mission of Turning Point USA, and how she planned to carry it forward. Then she said something that would ignite a firestorm. "No one will ever replace my husband," she told the roaring crowd. "But I do see some similarities of my husband in JD, in Vice President JD Vance. I do. And that's why I am so blessed to be able to introduce him tonight." The crowd erupted. Vance walked onto the stage in his crisp blue suit, arms open. What happened next lasted only 6 seconds. But those 6 seconds would be dissected frame by frame, analyzed by millions, and turned into one of the most controversial moments of 2025. They hugged. But it wasn't a quick, polite politician hug. Erika's hands went through JD's hair, leaving it slightly mussed. His hands rested on her hips. The embrace lingered, and the second the footage hit social media, the internet lost its collective mind. People weren't just watching the hug, they were studying it. Screenshots circulated showing every angle, every hand placement, every facial expression. Some called it a warm Christian embrace between friends mourning a shared loss. Others called it wildly inappropriate, especially given the circumstances. Critics pointed out that JD Vance is a married man, the sitting vice president, and this was a widow who'd buried her husband less than 2 months ago. The optics, they argued, were terrible. But there was more to this story than what the cameras caught. A professional lip reader named Nicola Hickling analyzed behind-the-scenes footage from that night and revealed something that changed everything. Before Erika even walked onto that stage, she was falling apart. In a clip that wasn't meant for public eyes, she turned to her assistant backstage and said, "I can't do this. I don't want to do it. Give me a second." This wasn't a woman trying to create a viral moment. This was a widow forcing herself to face thousands of people in the same place where her husband's mission had thrived, knowing he'd never stand there again. When she finally took the stage and delivered her speech, she held it together, barely, and when Vance walked out and wrapped his arms around her, he whispered, "I'm proud of you." It was meant to be reassuring, supportive, a friend telling a grieving widow that she was doing the impossible. But when they pulled apart, Erika's face told a different story. According to the lip reader, she said, "It's not going to bring him back." Those words weren't about JD Vance. They were about Charlie, about the crushing reality that no matter how many stages she stood on, no matter how many speeches she gave, her husband was gone forever. That context matters. Because to understand why this hug became such a massive deal, you have to understand what Erika Kirk had been through. On September 10, 2025, Charlie Kirk was speaking at Utah Valley University when a single bullet struck him in the neck. He was engaging with a student about mass shootings in America when a sniper, positioned on a rooftop 142 yards away, ended his life in an instant. The shooter, 22-year-old Tyler Robinson, turned himself in the next day. Prosecutors revealed text messages showing Robinson told his roommate He was tired of Charlie's hatred and saw an opportunity to take him out. The nation watched in horror as footage of the shooting spread across every platform. Charlie Kirk, the 31-year-old conservative firebrand who'd built Turning Point USA from the ground up, was gone. 8 days later, Erika was named CEO of the organization. It wasn't a power grab. Charlie had explicitly told his executives that if anything ever happened to him, he wanted Erika to take over. She didn't get time to grieve privately. She had to grieve publicly, under the scrutiny of millions, while stepping into shoes that felt impossibly big. At Charlie's memorial service on September 21st at State Farm Stadium in Arizona, Erika stood in front of tens of thousands of people and did something that stunned everyone. She forgave Tyler Robinson. "That young man, I forgive him," she said through tears. The answer to hate is not hate. That moment defined her. It showed the world that Erika Kirk wasn't just carrying on Charlie's work. She was embodying the principles he'd preached. Love over hate, faith over fear, strength in the face of unimaginable pain. So when she hugged JD Vance on that stage in Mississippi, it wasn't some calculated political move. It was a grieving woman leaning on someone who'd been there, who understood the weight of public life, who'd flown her husband's casket back to Arizona on Air Force Two just weeks earlier. But the internet doesn't care about context. The internet wants drama, and drama is exactly what it got, because JD Vance was already in hot water. At that same Turning Point USA event, he'd made comments that sparked their own controversy. When asked about his interfaith marriage to Usha Vance, who was raised Hindu, JD admitted he hoped she'd eventually be moved by the same thing I was moved by in church, and embrace Christianity. The backlash was swift and brutal. Critics accused him of disrespecting his wife's faith, of suggesting Hinduism was somehow inferior, of catering to his conservative Christian base at the expense of his own family. Usha Vance had been nothing but supportive of JD's faith journey. She attended church with him. She encouraged him to reconnect with his beliefs, but she'd made it clear she had no plans to convert. And yet here was the vice president, on stage in front of thousands, publicly expressing his hope that she would. The Hindu American Foundation called him out, asking why he wouldn't reciprocate by engaging with Hinduism if his wife had encouraged his faith. It was a PR nightmare, and it was happening the exact same night as the viral hug with Erika Kirk. People started connecting dots that maybe shouldn't have been connected. JD Vance, under fire for comments about his wife's religion, sharing an intimate embrace with a recently widowed conservative CEO. The optics were catastrophic, and then Shannon Watts poured gasoline on the fire. Shannon Watts is a New York Times best-selling author and a prominent voice in progressive circles. She's not someone who tweets lightly, so when she posted, "Vance announces divorce, marries Charlie Kirk's widow by the end of 2026, the internet exploded. The post racked up over 9 million views. Suddenly, the speculation wasn't just about whether the hug was appropriate. It was about whether JD Vance and Erika Kirk were secretly dating, whether Vance was planning to leave Usha, whether this was the beginning of some twisted political power couple origin story. The conspiracy theories spiraled out of control. Some claimed Erika had flown with JD on Air Force Two to the Ole Miss event, suggesting they were spending private time together. That was quickly debunked. Photos showed JD and Usha boarding the plane together from Joint Base Andrews. Erika wasn't with them, but the damage was done. The rumor mill was in overdrive, and nothing could stop it. That's when Joe Rogan entered the conversation. Rogan has a way of cutting through the noise. His podcast reaches millions, and when he gives an opinion, people listen. He didn't buy into the dating rumors. He didn't think JD and Erika were secretly planning some scandalous affair. What Rogan saw was a grieving widow and a vice president. caught in a moment that the media twisted into something it wasn't. He called out the absurdity of analyzing a 6-second hug as if it were evidence of infidelity. He pointed out that Erika Kirk had just lost the love of her life in the most horrific way imaginable. And maybe, just maybe, she deserved a little grace. Rogan's take resonated. Suddenly, the conversation shifted. People who'd been quick to judge started reconsidering. Maybe this wasn't about romance. Maybe it was about two people navigating unimaginable grief and political pressure in front of the entire world. Maybe the real villains here weren't JD or Erika, but the millions of people who turned their tragedy into entertainment. But Erika Kirk wasn't going to let the narrative be written for her. In early November, she sat down for her first major interview since the viral moment. She chose Fox News' Jesse Waters. And she didn't come to talk about JD Vance. She came to talk about justice. There were cameras all over my husband when he was murdered, she said, her voice steady but fierce. There have been cameras all over my friends and family, mourning. There have been cameras all over me, analyzing my every move, analyzing my every smile, my every tear. We deserve to have cameras in there. She was talking about Tyler Robinson's trial. The defense was trying to ban cameras from the courtroom, and Erika wasn't having it. Why not be transparent? She asked. There's nothing to hide. I know there's not, because I've seen what the case is built on. Let everyone see what true evil is. This is something that could impact a generation and generations to come. It was a masterclass in deflection. Instead of addressing the dating rumors, she redirected the spotlight to what actually mattered. Holding her husband's Lur accountable. The interview was powerful, emotional, and it worked. Suddenly, people weren't talking about the hug anymore. They were talking about Erika's strength, her courage, her commitment to transparency and justice. She'd taken control of the narrative in a way that no PR team could have scripted. So what's the truth? Are JD Vance and Erika Kirk dating? The answer, based on every verified source, is no. There's no evidence of a romantic relationship, no secret meetings, no affair. What there is a grieving widow trying to honor her husband's legacy, and a vice president who's navigating the brutal world of political optics. The hug that set the internet on fire was just that, a hug, a moment of support between two people connected by tragedy, faith, and a shared mission. But this story reveals something bigger. It shows how the internet takes raw human moments and turns them into spectacles. How grief in the public eye becomes content. How a widow can't even mourn without having her every gesture analyzed, criticized, and weaponized. Erika Kirk didn't ask for this. She didn't ask to become the CEO of a major conservative organization while still reeling from her husband's assassination. She didn't ask for millions of people to dissect a 6-second hug and accuse her of things she never did. What she did ask for was the chance to continue Charlie's work, to keep Turning Point USA alive, to raise her 2 young children while carrying the weight of a movement on her shoulders. And whether you agree with her politics or not, you have to respect the strength it takes to stand on that stage, look out at thousands of people, and keep going when everything inside you wants to break. JD Vance handled it the way a seasoned politician does, with professionalism and calm. He didn't pull away awkwardly. He didn't create a bigger scene. He offered support to someone who needed it and moved on. The real PR nightmare wasn't the hug. It was the context surrounding it, the comments about his wife's faith, the timing, the optics of a married vice president embracing a widow in front of the world. And Joe Rogan, he reminded everyone that sometimes a hug is just a hug. That grief is messy, and public life is brutal. And maybe we should all take a breath before turning someone's pain into a conspiracy theory. The conversation shifted because Rogan said what a lot of people were thinking but were afraid to say. that the whole thing had been blown wildly out of proportion. In the end, this story isn't about JD Vance and Erika Kirk secretly dating. It's about how fast a moment can spiral, how the internet amplifies everything, how a widow trying to honor her husband's memory became the center of one of the year's biggest controversies. It's about the cost of living in the public eye and the cruelty of strangers who think they know the truth based on 6 seconds of footage. Erika Kirk is still the CEO of Turning Point USA. She's still raising her kids. She's still fighting for transparency in Tyler Robinson's trial. And she's still grieving. JD Vance is still the vice president. He's still married to Usha, and he's still navigating the impossible balance of public service and personal life. Joe Rogan is still asking the questions no one else wants to ask. And the rest of us? We're still watching, still speculating, still waiting for the next moment to dissect. But maybe, just maybe, we should let Erika Kirk grieve in peace. Let JD Vance do his job, without reading romance into every gesture. And remember that behind every viral moment, there are real people dealing with real pain. This wasn't a scandal. It was a tragedy turned into entertainment. And the only ones who should be embarrassed are the people who couldn't see the difference.